This is, of course, the classic warning sign for you're about to get completely, pilfered of all of your wealth because of the gullibility of those who are greedy. Yes. They want to believe you. It's a con game. Yes. That the con man plays on your greed. So the toxic Bitcoin maximalist is really a defensive mechanism against this marauding predator class of shitcoiners and proof of stakers and fiat moneyers.
Hey guys, welcome back to Let's Talk Crypto. In today's video, Max Keiser and Stacy Herbert of the Orange Pill podcast warn about classic con games run by media outlets, such as portraying Sam Bankman-Fried as a billionaire genius or publishing fake news about El Salvador. Keiser notes that markets are smart and tend to reflect the reality of the situation, whereas the average person who watches mainstream media and does no due diligence gets fooled and loses their wealth. They highlighted the examples of Terra Luna and FTX, where some paid influencers opted to look the other way due to their greed and pursuit of easy money, while others decided to ask the right questions before accepting any proposition. They further refer to the proof-of-stake mentality of the fiat money world, where greed prevails and money can be printed at will, which has spread to the crypto space, resulting in people getting scammed by unscrupulous bad actors. Let's listen to Max and Stacy as they make the case for why we need Bitcoin more than ever. But before we do, please consider subscribing to our channel, as we bring you daily content on the latest crypto news. And now, let's jump right into the video.
The disaster is coming from within. The problems in the U.S. are not from external attacks; they're from the inside. Yes. So, like this guy Peter Zion's a great example. He's inside the U.S. and he's stoking racism and aberrant behavior. And this is interesting in terms of El Salvador would default because, you know, what I've learned on Wall Street in my many years is that the markets tend to reflect more of the reality of the situation. And if you look at the emerging market index for debt from all the countries around the world, the single greatest performer in 2023 is El Salvador. So again, it's one of these situations that I always hate to see. The average Joe on the street who watches mainstream media wouldn't consider something like El Salvador debt because they're being told it's a disaster. But the professionals on Wall Street who don't listen to mainstream media know that this is probably an excellent opportunity to make some money. And that's another way that the insiders typically can aggregate an excess quantity, and there's a huge concentration of wealth through the propagandization, through their controlled media outlets in a way that make the average person really unaware of the market realities.
Last summer, maybe, we had dinner with a guy. He manages some of the most famous of the sovereign wealth funds. And his specialty is emerging market debt. And so he has traveled all around the world to many parts of Africa, Latin America, to, go do the due diligence and look and see what the situation is. And when we had dinner with him, he was just like, I've never seen anything like this ever. He said, like all the countries I've been to, he had never seen such a gap between the headlines and the reality on the ground, just even from the point of just arriving at the airport and driving into San Salvador.
Yeah, I think the comment was made, it was like finding a Fabergé egg at a garage sale.
Yes.
In amongst, the tchotchkes for $5, here's a Fabergé egg called El Salvador, which is worth gazillions of dollars. And at that time, I remember the conversation, and I remember kind of looking at the markets, and I believe the debt was around 40 cents on the dollar. I checked recently, it's more like 80 cents on the dollar. So
I think it was even less than that. Remember, it was something like 28 or 29 cents. It was like really low.
So it's almost a triple from that conversation.
Yeah.
And of course, he's an emerging debt specialist, and this is why you become an emerging debt specialist, because the market tends to misprice things where the cost of due diligence is very high, because you have to actually go to these countries and you have to get on the ground. And due diligence is really almost absent from all kind of research today in these markets. And we saw that in the FTX scandal. Every single participant in the FTX scandal never did a lick of due diligence. They simply, except for Taylor Swift.
She was offered $100 million by FTX. And even somebody worth $10 billion, $100 million is hard to say no to. All you have to do is send some tweets and do a video or two. And she said no. And the reason why she said no is, well, she asked a simple question. And she said, are all of these things you list on here, they seem like unregistered securities. And none of those guys on CNBC who are pushing FTX, none of them, Scaramucci, Novogratz, Kevin O'Leary, none of them asked that question.
There was no due diligence. The people like the Novogratz and the Scaramucci's and others who are in the business, who should know better, who have licenses that proving that they've done some of their own accreditation and that they have knowledge of how these markets work, never asked even the simplest of questions, are these unregistered securities? And what we know from that group of folks is that they're bottom feeders. So there's literally nothing that they won't do for a penny or a nickel. When you have a fixed amount of money available, and it's not a fiat money system where trillions are being printed to encourage this type of malfeasance, you end up having to develop values and things that make a character and a person virtuous, for example. And that's what's missing from today's environment. I mean, it's all summed up essentially with, say, Dina Moose in his book, The Bitcoin Standard, of course, talks about low time preference. And this is the idea that you're willing to give up instant gratification for a bigger payoff in the future, right? And so what we have today is people like who are pushing FTX and the people you mentioned, they have extremely high time preference. They just want cash no matter what. They have no consideration whether it's legal, moral, ethical. They don't think about it. They just want the cash right now. And they're dangerously out of control. The fact is that everything in nature and everything in human experience and everything in the cosmos is governed by some set of rules, right? Governance is not completely obviated in any instance at all. There's always some kind of governance mechanism, and it brings us back to Bitcoin, which is the perfect governance mechanism, which gives us perfect money. And to get back to your previous point, when you have the presence of perfect money and perfect governance, it's revealing. And so this is, again, what Bitcoin here in El Salvador has ushered in the Bukele era, where so much is happening that's so positive, because the yardstick of perfect money and perfect time preference is bringing about this kind of, as you point out, this Renaissance-like thinking.
Bitcoin embodies proof of work, right? So the proof of stake mindset enters into this equation, and we still have this sort of cultural notion that if you have a lot of money, you must be a hard worker and you must be worth it, rather than Paul Krugman and just spouting propaganda for the Federal Reserve. That's why they create elaborate Rube Goldberg machines, whether it's around Ethereum and all these forks and proof of stake and doing that and doing this. And they pretend that they're all scientists and we're like PhDs and big thinkers and we're controlling this, when the fact is it's all a facade. There's nothing there.
Right. The prefix billionaire connotes a mastery and intelligence and at some kind of superiority. So you'll see on the news, billionaire XYZ says this, but there's no context that, oh, well, he got to be a billionaire by theft, right? They don't tell you that he stole the $1 billion. Well, they just say billionaire.
Taylor Swift rejected FTX, Sam Bankman-Fried's money. Everybody knows that he was like a meth head, sort of, no, he was like addicted to Adderall or something. There's this notion amongst a lot of young people that they think they take this Adderall and it makes them smarter. And he was spouting total nonsense. It's like the guy is a nut job. That's why. And he doesn't know what he's talking about because he's making it up, because we know for a fact now that there were 0 records kept. He just took money and spent it and gambled it. That's the operation.
But this is the concept that if you spew nonsense, it's a ticket to vast riches because of the gullibility of those who are greedy. Yes. They want to believe you. It's a con game. Yes. That the con man plays on your greed and you sell yourself on the fact. I believe during the recent prosecution or arrest and prosecution of Do Kwon, who was part of Luna.
Yes,
right?
yes.
Okay, it turns out that he was funneling all of his ill-gotten gains into Bitcoin.
Yeah, you were buying his shitcoin, Luna. And what would he do with it? He would buy Bitcoin. Thank you very much. That's the classic. That's colonialism. That's neo-colonialism. They convince you to send them your hard-earned money, and they convert it into perfect money for themselves and let you gamble with their tokens that they create out of thin air.
Right.
So
the toxic Bitcoin maximalist is really a defensive mechanism against this marauding predator class of shitcoiners and proof of stakers and fiat moneyers. So, this is, of course, the classic warning sign for you're about to get completely, pilfered of all of your wealth by this smiling salesman. So they have to be nice because they know that they're selling crap. Whereas Bitcoin, we can afford to be toxic Bitcoin maximalists because Bitcoin's going to do what it's going to do no matter what anybody does or doesn't do. It just does what it is. So we can be as toxic as we want to be. Fortunately, I'm naturally toxic and in a bad mood most of the time. So, me and Bitcoin are a good match. And Bitcoin maximalism has come along to catch up to my natural toxicity as just generally how I interface with humanity.
Keiser advocates for Bitcoin maximalism as a defense mechanism against the classic con game, perpetrated by the easy money mentality of altcoiners and fiat money supporters such as mainstream media. What are your thoughts on this? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure to give us a like and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching. This is Let's Talk Crypto, and we'll see you in the next video.